James Allen here, Winona, North Carolina, coming to you to tell you about my experience with Concept AgriTek. The people at Concept, along with the company, are some of the best that I've encountered. They've helped me achieve many goals that I've wanted to achieve in my farming career here in the last couple of years.
Good evening, everybody. How are you guys doing tonight? I'd like to welcome you to another Thursday night. You got myself and you got Brent Adams. Brent, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. Just looking forward to this conversation tonight.
Yes, it's actually tonight our conversation is brought to us by Concept AgriTek. And what we've done, we're going to have Britt Regan, who's the Concept Ag agronomist. And y'all, you will enjoy Britt. We're going to have Britt Boyd, Jamie Allen, and we might even have another farmer show up later if he gets here in time. But in the meantime, we're going to sit down and talk about some products. We're going to talk about some test plots that we've got going this year. And we're going to just have a little bit of fun tonight and discuss how the year's going. Britt, how are you doing? Britt?
Doing well.
Jamie Allen, Britt Boyd, how are you guys doing tonight?
Great, man. Doing good.
Well, it's been a year of years, has it not?
It has. A tale of two crops. Yeah.
Britt, why are you're sitting there with that look on your face?
Well, I mean, the way my territory is, I've gotten to see pretty much all extremes, folks that haven't had any water, folks that have had perfect water, and folks that have had too much water. It's all over the board. Every region's got its challenges this year.
Britt, what have you guys been up against this year so far?
Started out with basically a perfect planting season, and then it decided it was not going to rain for 8 weeks. And then when it did rain, it decided it was going to rain 14 inches in 6 days. But since we had that, it has pretty much leveled out. And since the 15th, 16th of June, we're sitting pretty. Mother Nature has been very kind.
Yes, it's been cool, which we usually don't get here. It's usually 110 degrees, 90% humidity. We've seen a bunch of 80-degree days, 70-degree nights, which we're not really used to. So it's a lot better than a couple years past. Still got hurricanes to look out for, so we're not counting too many things quite yet.
Well, and it has been one of those, it has been like for us, we got this last weekend got almost 5 inches of rain, and now they're saying we got another 5 coming this weekend. I mean, I hope our peanuts can learn how to swim.
Yeah, I've been waiting on Concept to create a snorkel. We could have used it the last 3 or 4 years, that's for sure.
Well, we've got one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is some of the tests that we've been running and some of the tests that Concept AgriTek runs. A lot of people do not realize how many in-field trials Concept AgriTek actually does.
Yes.
I know, Britt, you and Jamie have been part of them. We've got some Ryan Brandon and several of the guys here around where we are have. Britt, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Year in and year out, we rely on what we consider our progressive farmers, our top-notch guys, as well as our dealers to put our products through the paces. Whether it's a new product that we really need information about, or whether it is a new program that we're looking at, because we're constantly trying to find that competitive edge, the things that's going to do what we want it to do, which is, increase yield, increase quality, and give the farmer a greater ROI. We could not be as successful as we are if it were not for our partners, our dealers, and our rock star farmers that get out there, that are willing to, commit some acres and look at these things. And these aren't, university style plots where they're, 14, 20 feet long and, 4 rows wide. This is acreage. These are things that you can look at, that you're going to spend time behind, the steering wheel of the combine or the harvester, and you're going to get a feel for how the product is performing across the different soil types and topography of the fields. That is crucial information for us. Now, we also spend a pretty good chunk of money contracting out research with third-party researchers and universities, because that information is valuable as well. But the meat and potatoes, as far as our information that we generate, comes from our partners, our dealers, our rock star farmers. Those are the people that we rely on year in and year out to give us the feedback that we need in order to progress in the fashion that we think we need to.
Right. And I put the picture up of the one field here in Garfield, Georgia. It's not just like you said, it's not a 4-row trial. This is a trial. This is a 65-acre field split in half. And, the views don't lie. You look at it from the air and you can see the difference. And that data comes very valuable.
Oh, without a doubt, because like I said, it's hard to cheese through statistics the results across acreage compared to a small replicated plot. You make an error in a small replicated plot, it is only magnified when you run the statistics on it. But when you're dealing with 30 or 40 or 50 acres, things get a lot more sound. There's a lot more ground truth than it takes place with those type plots.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Jamie, are you going to push the limits this year?
I'm going to try. I push the limits every year. But one of the things that we do is we honestly don't go to a real extreme. Most of the really high soybean yields that we have picked have come off of just production. Usually we never get to the ones we actually spend time and a little bit more money on, because Mother Nature usually comes here in North Carolina and just kind of takes it from us before we get to it. But being able to, raise 90 plus bushel beans, have a 99, 97, and 19 with just a production bean, pretty much just showed that anybody can do it. And you can do it with minimal amount of money, and it's all just relative to the products that you use and the timing.
Oh, absolutely. Now, earlier today, Britt, you and I were talking. A lot of people, there's a lot of aspects that people don't look at as the whole. Residue RX was one of them. We were talking about planting behind wheat and using the product Residue RX. Tell us a little bit about how y'all did with that this year.
Well, what we've seen over the past couple of years, whether it be in heavy corn residue with the BT corns or in high yield wheat environments, in Eastern North Carolina, we've got high humidity. We're usually double cropping soybeans behind the wheat. And if you've got, 80 to 100 bushel wheat with that heavy fodder mat that's left behind the combine, it dictates into kind of a rough harvest going into soybean harvest, because you've got so much residue, so much humidity, and we start having issues as the sun goes down with the headers dragging and not being able to get our soybeans in on time just due to humidity. Well, where we're applying residue, we see a lot faster breakdown of the fodder and chaff. The stalks that are left standing vertical deteriorate a lot quicker. Basically, when you hit them with the head cutting the soybeans, it just turns into kind of like confetti. And we're getting a lot better residue breakdown, but we're getting more nutrition out of our wheat stover because of the bacteria that's there breaking it down the right way, and we don't have as much loss of our fertility that was left over in our wheat residue.
And that really is, when you've got to forward think to make money nowadays in farming. I sat in a restaurant yesterday and I heard a farmer that was discussing with a salesman. He says, I'm not train changing. He said, my daddy's done it this way. I'm going to do it this way. And we sat there, my son and I sat there, and he said, Dad, he says, he's losing $100 an acre.
Oh yeah.
And you have to, the way the markets are going today, the way everything is, you have to maximize your yield as high as you can push it.
Yes.
Right. That's
Well,
exactly right.
I mean, it's not even so much maximizing the yield. You have to take advantage of all the tools that are in your toolbox, right? So if you're stuck on only doing things one way, you are letting other things fall by the wayside. And that's one area where Concept AgriTek really tries to change the paradigm, is to get you to think about more than just yield. Let's look at bringing that soil into balance, making it healthy. Let's look at, what we can do as far as building a program that's going to fit your soil types, your region, your management styles, and the crops that you want to grow. There is no silver bullet. There's no magic thing that can be applied across everybody. And you've got to take the time to sit down with somebody that's qualified, that can suss all these things out, that can build you a program that is going to give you the ROI, it's going to give you the yield, and it's going to bring that land closer into balance. I mean, everybody's been on the program with us for a long time, and Britt, you can testify to this for sure. They have seen dramatic changes in their soil and the productivity of that soil. We've made a difference, and their input costs have gone down while their yields have gone up. And Jamie, you know for a fact too that you're at a point now where you will spend more money because you're doing way more with less, so you can afford to put more money out to push and get those yields up higher. Your ROI is still going to be maintained, but because all the work you've done up to that point, getting that ground in shape and having it pay you back, allows you the flexibility to put more money into it to push those things.
Hey, Bert, you bring up a good point there, man. And one of the things I was curious about for these guys, and there's so many companies out there that are promising to claim to boost yield or give you a greater return on ROI. First of all, for farmers, how do you cut through that noise? And second of all, what sets Concept apart from the rest?
Well, honestly, I'll follow up, but I'd rather Britt and Jamie answer that right now because they're
Right.
the direct recipients of
That's
what we've developed.
Right. That's who I was asking.
Well, one thing that a great example of what Bert was talking about, getting the land in shape. A couple of years ago, I started working with a large farmer in this area, and they started with some of the in-furrow biology, a bunch of bugs, biovate, and we saw some yield returns. But the big selling factor for those guys on their farm was 2 years after they started on the program. One of the owners of the farm called me. He said, "You're not going to believe what just happened." He said, "My guy running my bean planter just called, and he is a 100% believer in what you're doing now." I said, "Well, please explain some of this to me." He said, "Well, we rented this other piece of ground, and our neighbor and I have farmed the same way for the past 40 years. This is the only thing separating these two fields is a small ditch." Where they had been running the biology in furrow, the man, a hired hand running their bean planter, calls the owner of the farm. He said, "On the land we've been farming, where we've been putting the biology down, we've adjusted our soils. I'm running 6.5, 7 miles an hour. My planter's riding at 99 to 100% ride quality. The planter's planting great. Everything's perfect." He said, "When I cross the ditch onto the land we just rented where we've never put biology, I have to slow down my planter to 4.5, 5 miles an hour so I can get the planter in the ground." Now, this land had been tilled the same, treated the same for years and years until this farmer started putting down biology. It mellowed those tight soils, and it brought that land back into a healthy environment. And, this wasn't something that we were really using as a sales tool or a marketing gimmick to say, but when that soil changed, it did not just affect their bottom line as far as yield, but it affected their productivity. And for the hired hand that's running the tractor to take note of it, that's huge in my opinion. And it kind of validates everything that we thought we were seeing and learning in the field from what Concept AgriTek was doing, because it does affect more than just the top end yield potential.
Yeah.
I mean, if you pick up 2 miles an hour with a planter just on ride quality and getting the seating right, how does that affect your bottom line?
Exactly. Big time. Well, it's just like last year. We did a test here on peanuts last year. And it's not just the yield that made the difference on that. It went from a 69 grade to a 77. It bumped him up grade-wise. Yes, he had more of a yield increase, but just a few minor tweaks to his nutrient program brought his grade up and boosted where he was at. Yes, Bert.
You can't do that unless you got enough for everybody.
What? Programs bring, that's for sure. Especially when you look and you see, like especially test weight on corn with a year like last year. So we just hauled out corn last week in the floor scrapings where our lowest test weight load was 58.5% test weight. All the corn we hauled out averaged about 61% test weight, and the corn was whipped and blew on the ground, and we picked it at 15.5%. So I mean that it's when you have to thumb through products and look through, it's a program approach. And Concept was the first people come across that actually had a program approach that didn't walk up to me and go, "Hey, this is a bomb in a bottle that's going to give you 15 bushels." And you're wondering, how am I going to spray 8 ounces of this and it's going to give me 15 bushels?
Well, and that goes back to something that people, when you look for a supplier for new products, you need to look at the background of the products they sell and look at the farmers they have that are using their product. We've all discussed some of the problems we've seen from other chemical companies. That is something that quality, and it means the very best when it comes out.
Analysis for sure.
Well, one thing that I run into, and I'm in a unique situation. Not only am I a Concept Ag dealer, but I'm also a farmer. I was fortunate enough to be able to use the products for 1 or 2 years before I ever go to a customer and say, "Hey, we need to look at this and try this." Other than Jamie. Jamie is usually screaming at me, "What's new? I want it." But it gives me an opportunity to look at things in production practices to know that I'm carrying a quality product to a customer that can give them a return on investment. Sometimes I may not have the best product, and Bert knows a lot of times I'll look at a farmer and say, "Hey, this company has XYZ product and it may suit what you want to do better than anything I have," but I'm going to tell my customers that because that's what I'm supposed to do. As a retailer, as a friend, as a farmer, I'm supposed to help everybody get better, and I feel like that's the approach that Concept takes. Sometimes they don't have the tools in the toolbox that we specifically need for a purpose. But one thing I will say, every time Jamie or I or any of our other customers have come up with a harebrained scheme about something we need, they try to
That's something you don't see in this business, is when you can call a Bert, you can call a Daniel, you can call Trey. Trey may be playing golf somewhere. You can call him. He will call somebody. 4 weeks later, you have a pilot show up in the shop like, "Here, guys, you go try it out." And I mean, that's just something you just don't see in this business because they don't tend to listen to anybody. You see the same guy selling the same product for the last 15 years. And there's got to be a way to make it better. And that's the most exciting thing about Concept AgriTek is there's always something new coming. And there's always that excitement of what we're gonna. I mean, we're excited for beans that we just planted July 4th that got flooded, because we've got some new products to try, and we've got some new things to try, and we've got some new ideas to try that we got another chance this year to do, when usually we only get one shot.
And we had a conversation today with a large organization, and we were discussing, and the one thing he said is, you guys are trying with biologics. Why is that? Why is nobody else, but that is the truth. Concept AgriTek pushes biologics, and by far is the greatest manufacturer of biologics that I've seen in the country.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it goes back to, we've said for years, the big catchphrase is, think outside the box. Well, we don't even believe there is a box. You put yourself in a box you got to think out of. You've already cut your productivity. But the whole thing is, we take a look at what's going on around us. We take a look at what was there before man came in and started mucking about. And we know that you have to have the biological component in it if you want not only the land, but also whatever you're growing to fully express its genetic potential. All the years that the plant breeders have sweated and toiled to create better varieties, either because they yield better, they have better disease resistance, or whatever, if you don't give that plant the opportunity to express those genes, then all of that work that the breeders have put into it it's for naught. So biology really fits how this company approaches, soil health, plant health, and how we want to be positioned in the industry in order to do our customers right. So, it's important for us to continue to push the envelope, to continue to explore all of these things that this biology is capable of doing. And we have an outstanding microbiologist on staff. He doesn't get but about 3 hours sleep at night. So I know I can call him at any time I need to. And, if somebody says, hey, I'd like to see something, all you got to do is ask him, is it possible? 9 times out of 10, he's going to tell you, well, sure. But, at the end of the day, it all goes back to testing and implementation and the plot work, and relying on our partners to see what some of these harebrained products that we come up with, can do. And I say harebrained because like Britt alluded to, 99% of all the products that we have came from a farmer talking to us and saying, I need a product that can do this. And when you get 2 or 3 or 4 guys saying the same thing, it's going to be worth your while to take a look at it. Concept AgriTek is at the right size, and we have the right mentality so that we can be nimble enough so that we can dedicate our resources in trying to come up with the product to fill that need. And then we rely on folks like Britt and Jamie and some of our other partners to put it through its paces so that we can determine whether or not it does what they want and it's going to be economical when we put it into, production.
And that goes back to last year. And, Bert and I were talking earlier this year, and we're talking, well, a certain product wasn't working. And Daniel and Bert and Trey got to working with our chemist. And next thing we know, here comes a product, exactly what we were talking about. And that means a lot when because that means somebody's listening to you. They are actually listening to what you have to say.
That's one of the neatest things about it is when your opinion means something, and you feel like you do mean something to the company, because when guys help you achieve things that you dreamed of achieving, it means a lot to you, and for them to care about you too. It's one of the things you just don't see in this business a lot. And it's like I said, there's not many places that you can just call the whole list of everybody down the company and everybody will answer your call, return your call. including the owner of the company. I mean, it's truly one of the unique company for sure.
Especially when you call and he's on the golf course.
It means a lot to me is I feel like I'm part of a team.
Yes.
Yes.
It
It's
be
Yeah, it is.
Trey or Bert or a farmer in the field, we can all talk together. We can figure out what needs we need to fill for our crop. And then as a team, we work together to implement something to correct a problem. And there's very few companies that I feel like sit down and actually take that approach. I've worked with a lot of different companies through the years in the fertility business, and there were times that I would need something and they'd say, oh, that's not in our wheelhouse. That's not what we're going to do. We need to figure another way for you to achieve your goal. As soon as I call Bert or Trey, it's, we'll let you know something just as quick as we can. And usually within a week, I've got an answer on whether something can be done or not.
Yep.
And that is huge for me.
Problem solving is the best thing about that company. I mean, because most of our learning curve come from me and him about killing plants and killing crops.
But now that goes back to the learning. You're talking about the learning curve. We've got some charts that are up that you guys created most of these, and that was the learning curve, was it not?
Because you guys should only run 8 ounces. We're gonna throw a couple more gallons of water. We're gonna run 16. You know,
we want to see how far we can push it, just so we'll figure out what works and what doesn't.
And
all right, you see right here, this was now. Who did this one, Britt?
That was actually done on Turnpike Farms. That was my brother actually did this one.
But you can see the difference where, and yes, you're pushing the limits on things. But you go in there, and by the learning curve that you guys are having, look what you're coming out of it with.
Oh man, yes,
yeah.
You learn something every year, whether it's good or bad. But the one thing about doing the things that me and him done and scorching crops and burning them up, we learned how to recover them. And that was one of the coolest things about that. And now when we do have a lot of stress and a lot of bad weather, we're able to recover crops really, really quickly. And we feel like that, the yield goal is not out of reach. We haven't had great weather here in probably the last 4 or 5 years. And I mean, 2019 wasn't a great year. I mean, we had 160 acres to flood completely out, and then a quarter mile from that, pick a 99 bushel bean. So, I mean, that tells you can't quit on a crop, because when you do, you're going to get exactly that. And when you have people at your disposal like Bert that you can call and say, what can I do? And then he gives you a couple products to spray, and then the next morning your dad walks outside and just calls you and goes, hey man, what did you do to this corn? I mean, it was absolutely yellow, and it is black right now. What did you do? And I mean, that's one of the coolest things to understand, that just because something bad does happen, it doesn't ruin the crop.
No, there's always, you can have a bad thing happen, but there's always, almost always a way to recover some of what's there.
Yeah.
Oh, we were just talking earlier, and we were talking, about the flooded beans I had. And I said, right when they flooded, I was like, man, absolutely beautiful beans. And then we started talking. We're talking about this program we're going to run on these replant beans. I'm like, if these beans didn't flood, we wouldn't have got to do that. We wouldn't have got a second chance. We wouldn't have got to use these. I had to wait until next year, and that would have absolutely probably drove me crazy. And I mean, that's the thing, is they come out with stuff, and I'm like, man, I'm glad you got a new product, but my crops are almost done. I mean, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I got to play with it, man. I got to be able to go. So, actually having those opportunities to be able to do that, you can take the bad and turn it into some good. And that's always the cool thing with Concept, is what you can do with these products.
And you ever notice, and this is one thing I've noticed about Bert, no matter how bad of a day it is, no matter how stressed you get, you call Bert and you say, very first thing he'll say is that the problem you have? And it's like, yeah, well, that's the problem.
Well, Brandon, you'll get a kick out of this. A few years ago, Jamie had some corn that was really pretty. We were going to do some foliar feeding, put on some fungicide and insecticide. It was time of year. I was going on vacation with my family and was going to be gone for a week. So I get a phone call from Jamie, and I am literally 4.5 hours from home. He goes, "We got a problem. My corn is burnt slam up." And I'm just going through all these things in my head. What could have happened? What did we do? Bert was on a plane to Arizona. I called the owner of the Concept AgriTek. We got a problem. I'm 4.5 hours from home with my family. I can't get back today. I need somebody in this field to figure out what has happened, what we can do. I think Bert got off of the plane, rented a vehicle, and within 3 hours was driving back to the airport and flew to North Carolina. Well, in this time frame of him flying back, Jamie went ahead and threw on some Sweet Success and I think some Foliar RX. By the time Bert got to North Carolina from Arizona, the corn looked great. And Bert's like, "You mean I flew across the country? Thanks for this."
Well, I mean, we'd already learned that I'm not going to just let the corn sit there and be burnt. I know how to, like I said, we've messed up enough stuff before, but we used way too much foliar K out of an airplane was what the hell was. They had just brought out their foliar K at the time. What we were using was, you can't even call it foliar K. I mean, so it was like a 6%. Well, they hit us with 24%. Well, we've been running 2 or 3 gallons out of that plane and not having a problem, but now we're putting 3 or 4 times as much. So when we ran that, 2.5 gallons out of that plane, she got a little bit high on us. But the NutriTech Sweet Success of Foliar RX did its job. So it rebounded the corn within about 12 hours. So by the time he got there, he couldn't really see the burn on it.
Well, we didn't waste the opportunity. We did go out into the field and we dissected some corn plants and we verified that the cob that was there had not been damaged and things were looking good. So, I mean, it wasn't a wasted trip. But again, that was one. Yeah, I was halfway to Yuma, Arizona when Trey called me and said, "You got to book a flight to go to North Carolina." So I ate supper with the dealer we had in Yuma, Arizona, finished that up, turned right around, and drove right back to Phoenix, which is, like I said, about a 3.5 hour drive. Caught a plane and took off to North Carolina. But that's what it's everybody in the company reacts that way. It's not just, Bird or whatever. If there is a problem, we're going to make sure that we've got a boot on the ground to help figure out what's going on, whether it's whatever reason, and we're going to bring everything that we have to bear to try to figure out what caused it, what we can do to rectify it, and above and beyond anything else, what not to do ever again. But that's how it goes.
Took care of that problem though, because we put a lift kit on the sprayer. We don't have to worry about that anymore. We'll run 3 or 4 gallons. We run 20 gallons of water now.
I know. I wish everybody would have a sprayer with the ground clearance that you have, because that would make my life a lot easier. A lot of places in this country where those little yellow airplanes just flat don't fly.
Yeah. Well, we have that here. We have one plane. We have one plane in 100 miles here. I mean, what are you going to get?
Careful, Britt's liable to send his from North Carolina down there.
Where you see lightning, there is thunder.
But talking about that, there was some stuff, earlier this year, Bert and I asked Bert, and he said, last year we did some hemp studies, which worked real well. Well, we got back to the Anderson Brothers farm, and I asked Bert, I said, what can we do with tobacco? And the very first thing Bert looked at me is he said, we can make the tobacco sing. I think that's what you told me.
It was.
And then we started with starter 2020 when we planted it. And oh man, it looked great. We were going
bugs and biovate too. Now we had bugs and biovate
too. We did too. And we got that tobacco just looked great after the first 2 weeks. Come the third week, they had started fertilizing on the far side of the tobacco. And then it rained like 15 inches, so they couldn't get back out. We had tobacco that was, the untreated side was, 2 feet tall?
Yeah.
And our treated side was like 8 inches. And I told Bert, I'm like, oh, this is not, I said, I can't explain this. He said, no, quit being so impatient. Has he ever told you that, Jamie?
What, being so?
Yeah.
We're not, we tend to,
yes, I told him that.
So, as it,
on a plane and flew down for absolutely no reason. And I mean, I felt bad for it because I saw the burn coming out. I was like, well, I ain't seen the big guy in a while. I learned some stuff. We love when he comes down. Every time he does, we have a great conversation. We end up building upon the program that we're on. And I mean, it's just always a good time. So if Trey's going to tell you, I mean, we usually we may burn some stuff on purpose, man. You never know.
Well, this right here, as y'all can see, this is what it turned out to. Not only did the treated pass the untreated, it's a foot taller and has a whole lot better color to it.
There's a bunch of guys here in North Carolina that could use that for sure.
We ended up as we picked the lugs off of it this last weekend, and we were out there. We ended up with a good 2-to-1 margin over the weight. We were putting 1,800 pounds per box, 1,800 pounds of treated, fit in the box, nice and neat, just a little bit below the lid. The untreated it looked like Fido had just come and dumped on it because it just wadded and fallen off the edge. And well, I mean, we had no choice to match 1,800. We had to do it. A lot better quality on it, but all it took was just saying, "Hey, Bert, what can we do with this?"
That's usually what happens. If you farm cantaloupes, if you farm avocados, there's nothing. There's nothing I've ever asked him that he can't just.
No. Have y'all ever noticed? There's absolutely nothing we can't ask Bert, and he has the answer to it.
Oh.
We walked down. We were in San Antonio walking down the road, and Daniel started asking him about trees, and he started naming one by one.
Shall we talk about pecan trees?
You can talk about pecan trees if you want to.
Oh, tomato.
We have a lot of pecan trees around here, a lot of orchards. So we go, and Bert looks at me and starts laughing. And I said, what? He says, pecans. Or in his case, he goes, pecans are my specialty. Of all things, he had to totally dissect the tree and the bush in school. I mean, right down to the sexual traits of it.
Yeah, I'm in my plant breeding class at Mississippi State. I was handed the topic of pecan breeding, so yeah, I had to dive deep into it because that was a major grade and had to write a paper on it. So yeah, one of those things.
And we have ended up. We've ended up here with a couple of orchards with his program in those orchards because number one, it saved them a lot of money, and number two, it was a more efficient program. I mean, you can't beat that.
No, that's where those programs really win at, is when you pick something, especially in one of those competition, style plots, and the guys are talking about how much you spent per acre. I'm like, I mean, that was a production bean. And they start talking. I'm like, well, we put 4 tons of manure. I'm like, God, y'all are at $120 over what we spent. Wow. But yeah, that's the huge selling point, is just a return on the investment. And if people would just actually give the programs a chance, that's the problem when you actually tell somebody they have to work. It tends to, a lot of them tend to, I don't know. I'm like, well, I don't know. If you're really good with money, usually 15% on your money is pretty good. You spend 40 here and you return 150. That's a little bit over 50% return on your money.
Well, one of the neat things about Jamie is the last few years when he's gone up there to Raleigh for the awards for highest yield and whatnot, they always run the other portion is what you spent per acre. And a lot of guys that get into the competition yields, they will pour everything, including the kitchen sink, into that competition field to try to win the yield. And what a lot of people don't realize is Jamie doesn't really he doesn't pick a field and say, this is going to be my cherry field and I'm going to put everything in it. Jamie pretty much follows every acre on the same program. And it's only when, he's going in there and he's cutting, he said, this is cutting pretty good. Okay, let me call my county extension agent, let them come out and certify some acres, and we're going to cut this. So, I mean, pretty much all of Jamie's acres are treated exactly the same. Now, he does have some things where he plays and pushes the limits, but for the most part, when Jamie turns in a yield for competition, it's treated exactly the same way as every other acre on that farm. And that's what a lot of people don't appreciate when they take a look at these yield records that have been coming out of North Carolina, specifically from Jamie and a few other of Britt's customers. These guys are doing it not just on, 10 acres that they're wanting to enter in a competition, and only cut 3. They're doing it across their whole production.
Yeah.
And that's a really big difference from some of the other approaches that the competition guys are taking. These guys believe in the program, they execute the program, and then when they come up on an area where it looks like they might be able to do pretty well in competition, that's when they decide, okay, I'm going to have this certified, and bam, I'm going to cut it.
That's
one of the things that I want to, before we get too far out of it, we've been talking about how much we rely on our breeders and I mean our dealers and our rock star farmers and all that to test products and whatnot. One of the brightest up and coming stars as far as products in our company right now is our new EPA registered fungicide BioAid, and then our plant health product called BioHealth. Britt and his group have been instrumental in a lot of the early testing. The results that we have seen over the past 2 years, honestly, are quite astounding. It's made a huge difference, especially when you consider the environment that Eastern North Carolina is, as far as the amount of water you get, the humidity you get, the temperatures you get. It is a bona fide disease nursery. So the information that we've gotten from these guys on this product has been invaluable. And this year, the results that we're seeing in areas where we've have had decent treatment by Mother Nature have been really, really, really encouraging. I mean, better and above and beyond what we ever thought even after last year. It's, it's phenomenal. And that product right there came together over a few years of us doing different things for different people. And when we combined two different elements to create it, Britt and his bunch were one of the first people to stand up and raise their hand and say, we want to try it. Not just because it was about half the cost of the current top shelf fungicides that are on the market, but because they felt like the biological component in it was going to make the difference, because they've come to trust the biology that we've implemented in other products. And this would be the perfect opportunity to get Jamie to explain his trial he had on his soybeans last year. We've got a data sheet that we put together, and Jamie's trial is always the one that I circle and I highlight, because to me that trial means more than any other trial out there, because it actually takes into account a very negative weather impact that happened during that harvest season. And it's just phenomenal to me to take a look at it. Jamie, would you explain this?
Yeah, when we started, we got into the beans, and it was one of the cuts we had spent a little bit more time on, and we were actually going to pick a trial in it. And I broke in the cut to pick the trial, and the beans were running, really, really well. And then before we could really even get calibrated, we got rained out. And we went and pulled out, weighed the beans, measured them, and I mean, the beans were really, really good. And when we went back and were able to harvest the cut, probably 3 days later, we were picking the beans, and we got into that cut. The next cut we left out, and we got into the next cut, and we picked the BioAid strip, and then we went and picked the AgriTek strip. And I mean, it was a 5 bushel difference. And we're like, wow. I said, that's pretty incredible. And then the next thing you know, within a couple hours, we have just a massive rain come in. And I mean, it knocks us out for like a week and a half. We get a lot of heavy winds to come in. And when we get back to the cut, I'm finishing up the strips that, we had picked. And I start picking through the BioAid pick, and I'm like, man, we ain't really lost anything on these beans. And, I ended up picking a strip out and weighing it, and it's, 88 some bushels. And I'm going, wow. Well, I get over to the other side of the cut where the AgriTek is, and you just kind of have that little heart drop thing going. I'm going, wow. We've lost almost 10, 11 bushels on these beans. And the only difference between the two was the BioAid. So you could tell just the health benefits of the BioAid and what it actually done to the plant. And that's what really matters in this game, is the things you can't control. And if I'm looking at myself and I'm going, how can I really give myself some really good insurance? That's as good an insurance as you could have on anything to save yourself over $110, $130 an acre. I mean, that's one of the most impressive things of any product I've probably ever seen.
Well, and the beautiful thing about how we put together our products and all that, number one, they've got to perform. But number two, they've got to be economical. And that product right there is about half the cost per acre of some of the top brand fungicides that are out on the market. And if you can get those type results for half the cost, even if it means that you spend the same money and make 2 applications, you're still way ahead of the game. It is phenomenal as time goes on and we get to look at this in more and more, different crops and different regions and whatnot. The results are very, very consistent. And it's not just the active fungicidal part of it. It's also the biology that's coming in there and giving that plant health boost that is really making a huge difference. And I've seen a lot of it so far this year. It looks even better this year than it did last year. If this continues, I think it's going to be a tremendous tool for anybody. If you don't use anything else that we have in our product lineup, if you just use this, I think you're going to be well pleased and you're going to reap the benefits of it. But again, everything is cumulative. We keep going back to the program approach. There's no one product that's a silver bullet.
No.
Everything is cumulative. It is additive. We try to deliver what the plant needs when the plant needs it. And that is key above all else.
Yeah, and one thing that we haven't touched on in this conversation, but a lot of times in our program approach, we're able to use add to. If we're doing a nutritional supplement, whether it be micronutrients with NutriTek, or we're doing Calbor, calcium and boron late in season, it's timings that we can incorporate other applications where we're not adding an extra trip. We're doing a glyphosate application post-emerge on soybeans. That's when we can put in NutriTek and get that micronutrient shot through the systemic activity. We can back out maybe some of our adjuvants or surfactants because of the reaction of NutriTek and the way it works. And, you don't have to add a lot of extra trips through the field to actually be able to take advantage of a lot of the Concept Ag products.
Yeah, I mean, Concept AgriTek, we are a technology company. And every suite of products that we have, pretty much we have a technology that goes into it, whether it's Stress Tech or Transmax or Biotech or, the Nitrotech or what. I mean, we develop specific technologies that are going to enhance the effectiveness of our products or other products that you add them to. We're taking it a step further here. We're looking at some things that are going to be exceptional, I think, for us and our growers and our dealers. We're in talks and we're looking, but we're wanting to really push the technology part of our mission further and go beyond just fertilizer and plant health, things. There'll be more to that come later. Right now it's real early, but one of the things that I want to really touch on, we've kind of touched on it before, but Concept AgriTek's goal is to never sit still. We believe that there's never going to be a point to where you can sit back and go, well, we've done it. There's always going to be something that needs to be explored. And those ideas, again, come from our dealers and our farmers as well as from within the company. So we're always on the move. We're always trying to improve ourselves, always trying to improve the products that we deliver to our customers, because we want them to succeed. And that's the whole thing about it. And that's why everybody that's in the company is actively engaged in a single mission, and that is for our customers to succeed.
Absolutely. Now, as we're getting closer to the end of the show here, one of the things that you can all, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can question Britt Boyd. You can message Bert. Bert loves Facebook anyway. He'll take your messages. But don't hesitate to call the office at Concept AgriTek. They will get you a salesman and an agronomist that's close to you that you can deal with. And it's a one-on-one basis. You can call Bert and say, hey, I got this problem. And Bert will say, well, this is what we got. And let me look at my schedule. I'll get there as quick as I can. And that's something you have to understand is Concept AgriTek is there. It's a service. It is a family. And once you deal with them, you are part of the family. If there's an issue, they step in and take it. And when you start looking dollars for dollars and cents at everything, I promise you, your ROI in the end result will pay off going with programs.
Yeah, I mean, that's you know, the old television show "Have Gun Will Travel." Well, I've got a product guide, Will Travel. I was in Carthage, Texas yesterday visiting with some blackberry farmers, trying to help them improve their program and their farm. And, it doesn't matter how small of an organization you are or how large of an organization you are. We will devote the same amount of time and TLC to the smallest guy as we do the largest guy, because everybody is important. And again, it goes back to, we firmly believe in increasing the success of every one of the people that trust us with their dollars for a program.
And if anybody's got any questions, you can message any of us that were here tonight, and we will get you in touch with the right person or persons. Depends on what state you're in, or then it can be yins or you alls, but we will get you with the right people. All right, to end the night off real quick, Britt, what you and I were talking earlier today about how some bad things happen. What is the funniest thing that's happened to you and Jamie that you kind of stressed out about at the time, but later when you looked at it, you said, well,
Jamie had a block of soybeans, and this was one of the first years that we had worked with Concepts, and at that time it was a product called Micro-8. It was fresh with the Transmax technology, and we were not really familiar with all the things that could go on with it. Well, we knew we needed the micronutrients, so Jamie's doing a post-emerge application on these soybeans, and he's throwing in glyphosate and a couple of broadleaf herbicides, and he throws in a major, really hot surfactant adjuvant name brand product that's really good.
Fulvic Force in there.
But we also had some Fulvic Force, and we had Micro-8. I got beans the next morning, and it looked like somebody had been in the field with a blowtorch. And I thought they were completely gone. I mean, I honestly did.
They had no leaf.
There was no leaves left on the bean. The only thing left was a little tiny trifoliate right in the top where it had not opened up yet. We're kind of freaking out. Called Bert, told him what we had done. Foliar RX, sweet success. 3 days later, the field's green again. Now, all that foliage was gone, and we had to start again. But about V4.
Yeah.
But man, it literally looked like somebody had been in the field with a blowtorch, and he and I were both freaking out. But Bert saved us again. And so
that was the beta testing of like Foliar RX. That's how we really figured out that a lot of stuff. So that's when we really knew we could just push it to the limit. As long as we didn't kill it, we could rebound it with that thing in about a day and a half, baby. We're good. The amazing thing about it is what it taught us is you can really just kick the crap out of a soybean and still get a yield, because that block went like 87.5 bushels when we picked it.
They were badly abused, is all I can say.
That was the time they were burnt that year.
For those of you watching at home, this gray hair that I have is not entirely due to my wife and daughter and son. It's in large part due to them two sitting there in the corner of your screen.
Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys with us tonight. We'll do this. Actually, next time we're going to do it, I'm coming to you guys. We're going to do it live from there, and we're going to have some fun.
I do want to say, for everybody that's watching that is in North Carolina, I will be there for the Blacklands tour August 4th. So if you have questions, if you've never been part of the Concept AgriTek family or the Darkwater Enterprise family, I don't think it'd be a problem for you to recognize me. Please walk up, introduce yourself. We'll get to work and hopefully find something that's going to make you happy. But I will be there for the Blacklands tour August 4th.
Sweet. That's awesome. Brent, You've kind of stayed quiet tonight. And
Look, I just stay out of the way here. I'll let the experts talk on this stuff here. Also, I'm kind of worn out, man. It's been a busy week this week.
yeah, it has been. It really has been.
We got a lot going on here, but man, I want to thank everybody who tuned in for the live streams this week. We had a great one earlier in the week with American Farm Bureau Federation President Zippy Duval, and you'll hear more about that on the podcast next week. We brought in Aaron Enderlin, the Grand Ole Opry star, who was on here for a show here yesterday. So I had a lot going on. We got the podcast coming up. If everybody would go, please, and subscribe to that podcast. You can find that at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Deezer, Audible, and Odyssey. Pretty much wherever you get your podcasts, your smart speakers, everything. You could get that podcast there. Episode 4 just dropped here right before we went on the air. And Darren Mueller, who is an extension plant pathologist at Iowa State University, is on there talking about effective pest control and resistance management strategies. God bless you. And also, we talk about the National Farmers Union president, Rob LaRue. Some of the outtakes of the conversation we had with him on a live stream last week, talking about some of the legislative issues that they have on their radar screen for the rest of this year and beyond. And we're talking about drought in this week's Market Talk segment with Jesse Allen, and then we bring on some of that music from Aaron Enderlin. So a lot going on here. We've got another big week coming up this week, and again, we're just kind of building up to these farm shows, conferences, conventions, everything we got coming on in the fall. It'll be a busy time here. So really excited for everybody to get that podcast. Be watching out for the new website. farmlifemedia.com is going to be coming out here in the next few weeks. So be paying attention to the social medias here to find out all the details on that.
Absolutely. And we will be, of course, we've got Farm Life Radio over at Live 365. You guys can catch some great country music. We're going to have, we're getting there slowly but surely. I do have one picture, and of course, he never showed up. We had a conversation. Britt and I had a conversation earlier. Yesterday, our kids stay in the farm, and yesterday mine was in the field and picked up a new pet. They got him a cat. I have never in my life had him gag and at the same time when he called me after they had sprayed the tractor head and just let it fly.
Those two-tone kitties with the racing stripe are not to be trifled with.
No.
They are not.
Not at all.
Well, guys, it's been a great show tonight. We're glad you guys joined us, and everyone else, you guys can join us each week right here. Brent and myself. Brent's here through the week. I'll be here on Thursday nights. Bert, you'll be here next week, so we're going to do some videos. And wait, you'll be here for our live next week.
Should be.
Oh, this will be fun.
Oh yeah.
Well, guys, y'all have a great night. And everyone, remember, it's up to us each and every day to make a difference in somebody. We don't know when we pass somebody in the store coming in or out of a store if they're having a bad day. All it takes is 5 minutes to say, hey, how are you doing? And you might have just saved somebody's life or at least made a big difference.
That's true.
Guys, y'all have a great night, and we will see y'all next week. See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.